"You won't believe what this teacher did to a little black girl." But what happened next shocked the whole class. In a small town in the southern United States, where old traditions and prejudices were still in the air, there lived a little girl named Ella Johnson. Ella was the only black student in her class, and from the very beginning of the school year, she faced unfair treatment from her teacher, Miss Harper. Miss Harper, a middle-aged woman with cold eyes and strict manners, always seemed to find a reason to find fault with Ella. She answered too loudly in class, or her homework was not neat enough, although other students did the same. Sometimes Miss Harper even ignored Ella's raised hand, pretending not to notice it. Ella was a quiet and modest girl, but there was a fire burning inside her that she inherited from her mother, a woman who always taught her to stand up for herself. Ella's mother, Martha, worked 2 jobs to provide her daughter with everything she needed and often repeated, "You have to be strong, Ella. The world won't always be fair to you, but you have to fight for your place in the sun." The first confrontation. One day in literature class, Miss Harper asked, "Who can name the main character of the book we read last week?" Ella, who always read carefully and loved literature, immediately raised her hand. But Miss Harper, as usual, pretended not to see her, and called another student Tommy, who was known for his jokes and frivolous attitude to learning. Tommy, of course, couldn't answer, and Miss Harper called another student, Susie, who also didn't know the answer. Ella, feeling that her patience was running out, said quietly but firmly, "Miss Harper, I know the answer." The teacher, surprised that Ella dared to speak without permission, abruptly turned to her. "Ella, if you interrupt the lesson again, I will send you to the principal." But Ella didn't give up. She stood up and, looking Miss Harper straight in the eye, said, "The main character's name is Tom, and he's fighting for justice, just like me. But, Miss Harper, is it fair that you never give me a chance to answer, even when I know the answer better than anyone?" The class froze. No one expected the quiet and modest Ella to say such a thing. Miss Harper blushed, but couldn't find the words to respond. At that moment, one of the students, Jacob, who was usually the ringleader in the class, suddenly said, "Ella is right. Why do you always ignore her?" Jacob was a popular boy, and his words carried weight. The other students started whispering to each other, and soon the whole class supported Ella. Miss Harper, realizing that the situation was getting out of control, tried to restore order, but it was too late. Ella, inspired by the support of her classmates, continued, "I just want to be treated the same as everyone else. I deserve it." Consequences. After this incident, Miss Harper's attitude towards Ella changed, although at first it was difficult for her. The teacher became more attentive, but her behavior was still cold and distant. Ella, in turn, became more confident in herself. She began participating in school events, and her talents, which had previously gone unnoticed, were finally recognized. One day, at a school talent contest, Ella decided to read a poem that she had written herself. It was about the struggle for justice and how important it is to remain yourself despite difficulties. When she finished, the audience burst into applause. Even Miss Harper, who was sitting in the front row, couldn't hold back her tears. After the competition, Miss Harper approached Ella. "Ella, I want to apologize to you," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been unfair to you, and it's not right. You deserve respect and support, just like any other student. I hope you can forgive me." Ella looked at her and smiled. "I forgive you, Miss Harper," she said. "But it is important not only to apologize, but also to change. I believe that you can become better." New challenges. From that day on, Miss Harper really began to change. She became more attentive to all the students, regardless of their background or appearance. However, not everyone at the school was ready to accept these changes. Some teachers and even parents of students began to express dissatisfaction, believing that Miss Harper was too soft on Ella and other students who had previously been in the shadows. One day, At a parent-teacher meeting, one of the parents, Mr. Graham, openly expressed his dissatisfaction. Why should we put up with the fact that our children study in a classroom where they are treated differently from others? This girl, Ella, is getting too much attention, and it's not fair. Ella, who attended the meeting with her mother, could not remain silent. She stood up and, looking at Mr. Graham, said, "I'm not asking for special attention. I just want to be treated the same as everyone else. Is that too much?" Her words caused a storm of emotions. Some parents supported her while others continued to be outraged. Martha, Ella's mother, also defended her daughter. "My daughter deserves the same respect as your child. If you can't figure it out, then the problem is not with her, but with you." School Justice Club. Inspired by her victory, Ella decided to move on. She organized a school club called the Voice of Justice, where students could discuss issues of equality, respect, and combating prejudice. The club quickly gained popularity, and not only black students joined it, but also children of other nationalities, as well as those who felt like outcasts. One day, at a club meeting, Ella suggested organizing a school event called Equality Day. The idea was for each student to feel like they were in the other's shoes, to understand what it was like to be in a minority or to face injustice. The campaign received support not only from students, but also from some teachers, including Miss Harper. Equality Day. Equality Day has become a real event at school. The students switched places, trying on the roles of those who are usually in the shadows. Ella, for example, spent the day as the class leader, and Jacob, a popular boy, tried himself as a quiet student who is often ignored. Miss Harper also took part, giving a lesson in the role of a student. By the end of the day, many students admitted that they had never thought about what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes. Jacob, who had never noticed Ella's problems before, approached her and said, "Now I understand what you go through every day. You're strong, Ella. I'm proud to know you." A new beginning. Ella's story has become an example for many at her school. She reminded everyone that even a small voice can change a lot if it sounds confident and true. And for Ella, it was just the beginning. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer and fighting for people's rights at a higher level. And who knows, maybe one day her name will become known to the whole world. But for now, she was just a little girl who found the strength to stand up to injustice and inspired others to do the same. And that was her real victory. Epilogue. A few years later, Ella graduated from high school with honors and enrolled in a prestigious university, where she studied law. Her story inspired many, and she continued to fight for justice, already at a higher level. Miss Harper, who was once her main opponent, has become one of her biggest fans. She often wrote letters to Ella, telling her how her example had changed her life. And in that small school in the southern United States, they still hold Equality Day every year to remind everyone that justice begins with small steps. And the first one was made by a little girl named Ella. New Horizons. After graduating from university, Ella became a well-known lawyer, specializing in civil rights cases. Her name became a symbol of the struggle for justice, and she often spoke at conferences telling her story. One day, she was invited to speak at her hometown school, where it all began. Ella stood in front of students, teachers, and parents, many of whom remembered her as the same little girl who had once defied injustice. "Each of you can change the world," she said. "Start small, be brave, be fair, and never be afraid to stand up for what you believe in." Her words drew a standing ovation, and at that moment, Ella realized that her struggle had not been in vain. She not only changed her life, but also inspired others to make changes. And that was her greatest victory. Conclusion. Ella's story is a reminder that even the smallest voice can change the world. It started with one brave act that inspired an entire school, and then an entire community. Ella proved that justice is not just a word, but an action that begins with each of us. And if you ever hear about a little girl who defied injustice, remember, this could be the beginning of a great new story.